Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my colleague, Forbes staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Your team has been looking at the fortunes of all presidential contenders, and you have found the net worth of Marianne Williamson, a Democratic presidential contender. Before we dive into that number, can you first tell us who is Marianne Williamson?
Marianne Williamson is a spiritual self-help author. She first came to fame in the early 90s when she wrote a book that got her on Oprah, which is, every author's dream, I guess, other than maybe to co-write a book with Oprah. So she got a lot of attention that way. She ran for president last time out when she really picked up some notoriety from the debate stage, saying things like she would beat Donald Trump with love. Needless to say, she did not. Somebody else beat Donald Trump with politics, actually. So she is running again this time out. She is challenging Joe Biden now as the incumbent.
Getting Oprah's attention, if you're an author, like you said, is every author's dream. I can imagine that's pretty lucrative, though. Point blank, how much is she worth? And what does her portfolio look like? What are some of those assets?
So we have her worth less than what she should be. We estimate her net value to be about $2.5 million. She doesn't own a home. She doesn't have any sort of business that's worth much beyond just the intellectual property to her books. It's mostly tied up in mutual fund investments, cash. She owns some individual stocks such as Apple, Home Depot, and Google, but it's very easy to liquidate. If she wanted to cash everything out, she could do so very easily.
Zach, I'm going to be honest with you. Math is not my strong suit, but you've reported that when she released her tax returns in 2020, she generated $7.5 million in revenue from 2013 to 2017. So 7.5 obviously is a lot higher than 2.5. Why is she not more wealthy?
That's an excellent question. From the best we can tell, looking at those tax returns, we could see the write-offs that she was taking. She is an extravagant spender. She spends a lot of money on travel, a lot of money on clothing, lifestyle. I think to have this image, it's expensive to be on this circuit. She certainly gets paid for her speeches, gets paid for her books, but spends a lot of money. And she's also spent a lot on, she ran for House, lost to Ted Lieu back about 15 years ago, or excuse me, 2014. And she spent a good chunk of change there. She lost, we're guessing, about $400,000 at least. And just based on estimates, we know at least $400,000. It could be more. And then she didn't spend as much on the last time out, but already this presidential candidate presidential run, she's dropped $220,000 of loans, and she told us she does not expect to get it back. So, right there between those two races, that's $660,000 just like that.
You write that she has described one of her campaigns as being rather cavalier with spending money. You're just reporting that she basically is. Losing that amount of money is huge. So can you explain her past runs for office and what is she spending that money on?
Sure. Yeah, that was a quote from one of her books. She actually wrote a book on financial planning, which I certainly found interesting given her own not having as much as you'd expect. The quote was, "Perhaps we bought too much, saved too little, or were otherwise cavalier about money." And that certainly seems to be the case with her, especially in that 2014 campaign where she ended up, I think she came in fourth in the open primary, and put a sizable chunk out there. She was the biggest donor to her campaign. There's nothing you could point to as an easy reason for why she's investing this much in her current presidential campaign. It's not like she's going to have, based on past experience, it's not like she's going to have a book bonanza payoff that's going to make all the money worth it. She might experience a little bit of a spike. Her most famous book, A Return to Love, has been a solid earner now for 30 years. I think it sells like 20,000 copies a year, which is phenomenal for a book that old. She believes in her candidacy is the best reason we can see for it.
I do want to talk about Marianne Williamson, the political contender here, because she is running against an incumbent and she is a long shot candidate. And aside from believing in yourself, I'm not really seeing a reason to tank your fortune on a long shot campaign. But what are her politics like? What type of Democrat is she?
She is, kind of running against Biden with trying to get away from politics as usual. It's a lot of her political message is infused with the same spirituality that you will find in her books. And it's I think part of the reason she's not investing more money in her own campaign this time out is it's a lot tougher when you're running against an incumbent. The Democrats aren't having any debates, so she's not getting any airtime, and people are less likely to support somebody who is almost certainly, going to lose.
Financially speaking, then, is it a good idea for her to be running for president? Is it working out in her favor, or is it a mixed bag?
Financially speaking, it looks to be a terrible, terrible deal. I mean, that could always change. Maybe something wonderful will happen because of this. Maybe her candidacy will inspire somebody to buy, the movie rights to her books. But she's in her 70s. She's got a decent enough money. Why not spend it? She certainly would not be the first person to, spend money on a presidential campaign they have no chance of winning just out of their own ego. We could a lot of us watched Succession and saw that happening in fictional world, but it certainly happens in the real world as well.
You're reporting she's worth $2.5 million. So how does that stack up to the other presidential contenders, both Democrats and Republicans?
It's pretty much in the middle. Joe Biden right now we have at 11, or excuse me, I think it's like $10 million from when we estimated him. Obviously, Donald Trump takes the cake at about $2.6 billion. Vivek Ramaswamy doing really well. So actually, I mean, she's probably more towards the bottom, probably a little bit better than some of the people who've been career public servants, but we haven't posted all of them yet. So honestly, I haven't done all the evaluations, so I'm kind of in the dark on some of that, and looking forward to seeing what my colleagues come up with there.
Zach, we know that she is continuing this presidential run, but do we know what's next for Marianne Williamson? Another book, perhaps? What does her future look like?
Oh, it absolutely looks like another book. I mean, she's got a book set to come out in May, which is right in the middle of the primary contest.
Zach Everson, per usual, thanks for your insights and reporting. We look forward to you joining again.
My pleasure.